Welcome to Off Grid Path. I'm going to be doing a slightly different video today because I want to focus on archery, and it's something that I have taken up fairly recently within the last year. I don't do it that consistently, but I try and get out once every week or 2 weeks, and it's something that has taken me by surprise really, because I've never been into archery, I've never really given it a go before, and it's something that's sort of come to me recently because I just wanted to, one, just have something fun to do, and two, try and build up on a skill. And because I'm living in the UK, you know, bow hunting really isn't a thing in the UK. In fact, I think it's probably illegal. I don't know for sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was illegal. So it's not something that I was ever, you know, I very much doubt that I would ever hunt with a bow, but it's more just the skill and simplicity of it which really attracted me to it. And I just want to sort of say that I wouldn't even call myself an archer by any means. I'm really new to it. I really enjoy it, but I'm not an archer and I know very little about it, which is partly why I'm making this video. I love learning about new things, and I guess it's for anyone that is thinking about getting into archery. It's certainly not an instructional video on what things mean, but more kind of reasons why I've got into it, because it's fantastic and it's almost like a therapy for me. So one thing I found when I was getting into archery is that I guess with anything that you do, it's a minefield of information. And certainly with archery, I didn't realize how deep it went. So, you know, as soon as you kind of scratch the surface, you enter this world of just certain terminology, and it's very, very easy to get lost in the world of archery, especially when you're starting out, which I am, because you don't know what to get, what's good for the first bow to buy, because there's so many different types of bow, what draw strength you need for the bow, like draw weight, what types of string, what types of arrows. I mean, arrows are a whole other kind of ball game in terms of archery, and people go into so much detail, and it's amazing to see and to watch kind of YouTube videos and people that really know what they're talking about go into so much detail and intricacies within archery. So for me, I really didn't have a clue on how to start. So essentially I just bought a bow, and I went solely, and this is the wrong thing, and any kind of archers or anyone experienced in archery will be probably shouting at the screen going, that is ridiculous. But I just bought a bow that I like the look of. It's a flat bow. It's made by a company called Bodnik, and it's called the Slick Stick, and it's 58 inches in length, and it's got a 28 inch, I've forgotten to see, this is what I mean, I'm very new to archery and I've forgotten the term for the draw length, and it's 35 pounds draw weight. And the reason I went for 35 pounds, and this was one of the big decisions at the start, was I went on quite a few forums and looked on YouTube videos and online, and was trying to figure out, like, you know, what draw weight do I want to start with. I don't want something that's too little, that's too easy to pull, but I also don't want something that's going to break my back to begin with, because archery is a very specific kind of strength, and I didn't want to be kind of like really straining my back and arms to, you know, cause myself injury by going for a draw weight that was just way too high. So I ended up settling for 35 pounds, which I'm really happy with. I'm really happy with starting on 35 pounds because it was a nice draw weight. And I remember when I first started, I was like, wow, this feels quite tough to pull back. But now, having done it for a period of time, I feel like I want to go up to another weight, and whether that's going up in increments of 5 pounds or whether it's jumping from 35 to 45, I think, having done it for, you know, 6 to 8 months or so, I feel like 45 to 50 pounds in that range would be my kind of optimum draw weight. So it's whether I quite like to get a new bow and jump up to 45 or 50 pounds. It's difficult to know without trying different bows out. And where I live, there's not many, well, there isn't an archery store in close vicinity, so it's difficult to try different bows. And I suppose you can join a club and things like that. But I went for a flat bow, and whenever I do anything, what I really like is the simplicity of something. So within archery, you've got compound bows where they've got the kind of pulley systems and things where they can take a really heavy pull and sort of stage it down with pulleys to something that's kind of manageable. I really respect them. I've watched a lot of videos of people doing that, and it's amazing to watch. But for me, it just seems a bit faffy, and I love the simplicity of it. And I discovered something called instinctive shooting in archery, which is very much almost, and I don't want to be controversial here, but almost does away with very step-by-step technique. There's still sort of certain things that you need to abide by, but it's very much instinctive. So you're kind of reactive to a certain thing, and you feel the shot more than kind of taking this very pragmatic approach to making sure each step of your draw is bang on, so you get consistency every time. Whereas, and there is an element to that, I believe, with instinctive shooting, but it's a lot more about the feel and what feels right. And that really kind of resonated with me. I love that kind of style of shooting. Also, I wanted to do something that was just nice and simple. I wanted a bow that was nice and simple, and originally I looked at takedown bows, which essentially come in 3 parts, I believe, that you kind of bolt together. And I know there's one called the Samak Sage, which is kind of a bestseller, and that's what a lot of people online recommended as the first bow. And I think people's main bow, I think it's quite a popular bow to use. But I didn't like the idea of kind of, again, like taking something down. I like the idea of a one-piece bow that's a really nice kind of, almost a work of art, really. Not that takedown bows aren't, but I just like the traditional style of a one-piece bow. So I settled for the Bodnik Slick Stick, which is kind of made in partnership with Bear Paw, I believe. I'll leave a link down below in the description. And again, I had nothing to go on, so I got this bow without anything to compare it to. So even now, I don't know if the bow's right for me. I'm actually 6'5", so I'm sure it's probably not right for me. However, I've had such a lovely time with the bow. Really enjoyed shooting it. I love everything about it. Like the workmanship and craftsmanship into it is fantastic. It's a really beautiful product, you know, like tool to use. Even though I've got nothing to compare it to, it's fantastic, and I've been getting along with it really well. That's not to say, you know, there could be another bow out there that could completely be a game changer for me, and at some point I'd love to try, when I get the opportunity, try a few different bows. But the thing for me was, and again, this is probably controversial, but I didn't want to go into a club, and this is probably the stubbornness in me. I like discovering things for myself and making my own mistakes and kind of figuring out my own style with things. And what I didn't want to do was kind of join an archery club where it's potentially indoors in a sports centre or something like that, but it's in a controlled environment, and I didn't want someone saying this is what you should do. And I appreciate that is what you probably should do, because you're going to get the right technique and you're probably going to learn faster. But I wanted to discover it for myself, and luckily for me, I've got a friend with who has a bit of woodland where I'm at now, and I can come up and just shoot targets up here, which is a lovely position to be in, and I'm really, you know, grateful for that. So what archery has turned into for me is very much a therapy, because it's such a slow pace process. The whole thing about it, from getting it out of the bag to stringing it up, and none of it's fast paced. It's not like it's rushed. In fact, it's better when it's done slowly. It's just this is, it's almost a ritual when you get the bow out, and as soon as you get the bow out, everything just sort of slows down and your breathing slows down, and it's just this very relaxed, lovely process to begin shooting. And it's the same thing when you are shooting. For me, I found that, you know, if I'm feeling sort of stressed in my head or I'm rushing around, you're just going to be terrible at shooting. Not that I'm the best anyway, but I've noticed for me, when the more relaxed I am, which obviously makes sense, the better shots I'm getting for archery. So I think the biggest takeaway for me is it's that kind of therapy, because everything slows down, and it's not so much that you're forced to slow down, but you want to, and it's just a natural thing to completely take your time, relax, and it's a slow, lovely process. And for me, I'm very lucky because I'm in the woods, so it's this, you know, a very nice environment I get to walk around in and just shoot the bow. So I've got this little cheap foam square target, which is definitely too small for me, but you know, it works, it's quite nice, and if I miss, you know, it generally just goes into the ground. I'd probably spend about half an hour looking for an arrow because they just kind of disappear in the undergrowth. But you know, there's not a huge amount of point to this film. I just wanted to kind of share a very quickly emerging passion of mine, which is archery. And I'd implore anyone to give it a go. And I think the takeaway for me is that simplicity. Like, I don't wear a wrist guard, and that is probably a sign that my technique is wrong, because most people I see are wearing a wrist guard to stop the string hitting your forearm, and it doesn't for me, which kind of screams that I'm doing it wrong. But again, I like that it's the simplicity of, I can just pick the bow up and go and shoot some arrows. I don't have to put something on my wrist, and I'm building up my calluses on my fingers, because I started off with climbing tape. I think it's like magnesium tape, just taping up 3 fingers here that I shoot with, because it gets quite sore. The string is obviously really taut, but now I'm not firing with any protection on my hands, which I quite like, because I'm building up that kind of resistance in my fingertips to be able to kind of withstand that pressure. It's the simplicity I love. The fact that I've got the 35-pound draw weight is great, because it means that I don't get tired so easily. I can draw that for hours and not get too tired, now that I've kind of built up the strength for it and the muscle memory. It's not to say I would like to jump up a notch, but to go from 35 to 40 pounds, for instance, if I want to do it incrementally, it's just a lot of money, because you have to buy a whole new bow. So I think I prefer to have the 35 and jump to either 45 or 50. And that's the big decision I have to make, is like, do I buy a 45 or do I buy a 50? And obviously it varies depending, if you're watching this thinking about getting into it, it obviously varies depending on your size and weight and what you can pull. But 35 pounds was a really nice entry level for me, and I still really enjoy it. But I do find that I'm now craving a bit more draw weight and a bit more power. That's definitely a thing at the moment. I'm really interested, you know, if there's archers that are watching this, any advice is greatly received. I watch lots of videos on YouTube, and there's some fantastic people like Clay Hayes, I think Clay Hayes is his name, who's brilliant. Watch him a lot and has a huge amount of knowledge, and I've got a lot of respect for, you know, the deep dive. And this is another thing that when people get, well, when I got into archery, the amount of different, and this is every part of archery, it's not just the arrows, but the amount of different types of arrows, and then you've got the spine number, you know, kind of how flexible it is, and then it's unbelievable how much detail and intricacies you can go into with archery. And I still know very, very little about it. I've tried a few different arrows out now, and funnily enough, the first ones that I bought feel the nicest. And it's quite surprising how different they actually are as well. The ones I tried out were, well, they just didn't suit me and I guess my way of shooting. And so I've kind of found an arrow. I still want to try lots of different ones, but I've kind of found an arrow that I like. And now it's a case of maybe experimenting with the stiffness of the arrow, the sort of spine stiffness, and seeing what sort of difference that makes within an arrow that I like. And I guess that's the best way to do it, but it's not a cheap way to do it really, because you've got to buy these arrows to try them out, and they might not be the best. But that's obviously where the advantage is of joining a club, because when you're in a club, you've got, I guess, access to quite a few different bows, lots of different arrows that you can try out, and people's knowledge obviously is invaluable. But I'm just one of those kind of weird, stubborn hermits that like to try things for myself and discover it and make the mistakes. So I just wanted to do a little video on archery and bow shooting, because I love it, and I'd love to hear any comments if you're thinking about getting into archery, or if you are a serious archer. Then any kind of questions or comments are more than welcome. So thanks for watching, and feel free to check out any of the other videos on the channel, Off Grid Path, where I've got a mix of cabin kind of build films and living off grid, and a bit of bushcraft as well. So cheers.